College football best bets presented by FanDuel make every moment more. How about Danny Kanell in week 6? It's about damn time, brother. 14-5. How about that? Chip Patterson just plugging away. Now 14 games over 500 this season against the spread. Picking totals as well. Our top 25 college football picks. And, man, it was a wild, chaotic weekend of upsets in college football with Vanderbilt knocking off #1 Bama, Arkansas beating #4 Tennessee, and many more. Top 11 upsets last week. And this is the week that college football fans have been waiting for since before the season. The week where we get the best matchups on paper of the season. That's Danny Kanell. That's Chip Patterson. I'm Chris Hassel. Let's start, though, with some of those teams looking to rebound after those crazy losses. Alabama starting us off, minus 21.5 at home against South Carolina. They dropped from 1 to 7 in the AP poll. That's the largest drop by a #1 team, Danny, in 15 years.
Yes, the temptation is to say, oh, they're going to come out angry, they're going to come out mad, and they're just going to blow out South Carolina. But I'm not at a place yet where I can trust this Alabama team to do that. I think they'll win the game, but you know what else I think? I think this game is going to be lower scoring because as much as Alabama's defense was exposed against Vanderbilt and Diego Pavia was able to take advantage of that, I don't have the same confidence that Lenora Sellers, the freshman quarterback for South Carolina, will be able to exploit some of those deficiencies in the secondary. And then on the flip side, South Carolina's defense, they did hold Ole Miss to 27 points, one of the more prolific offenses in the country last year. So I think Alabama wins, but I don't know if there's going to be offensive fireworks from either team, so I'll take the under.
Au contraire, monsieur. All right, I'm glad we're on opposite sides right off the jump here because I think that Alabama is starting to look like some of these LSU teams that we've seen. And I think Jalen Milroe might have a Jaden Daniels-like path to the Heisman Trophy because Alabama's going to have to go score 45 points to go win all these ball games. I actually do think that when you think about Lenora Sellers and the quarterback run game, he might be able to go out there and get South Carolina enough points to run this up. I think Ole Miss took their foot off the gas, knowing that they had a big game coming up in the second half and they had put the Gamecocks away. And I just am not going to believe that Alabama is going to not be able to score 40 points and also not limit opponents from going out there to get 20. So basically anything under 60 is going to get a good look from me as an over, and that certainly qualifies at 51.5.
Okay, so Bama coming off the loss to an unranked team. Tennessee also coming off a loss to an unranked team. Now into a rivalry game against Florida. And Danny, some of the Gator fans that we've been rubbing shoulders with are starting to feel themselves with a rivalry win against UCF last week.
They're out here chests all puffed out like they're back. I am not so sold on it. Now, they have been better. I think Graham Mertz has provided some stability to that offense. DJ Lagway still getting some sprinkle of play in there in the game. But I think what they're going to run into is a buzzsaw that's not Tennessee's offense, but Tennessee's defense. While the offense traditionally under Josh Heupel has been the story, they've been slowed down somewhat. Nico Iamaleava, the true freshman quarterback, redshirt freshman quarterback, has been kind of held in check recently. I don't know if he's going to have an explosive game, but the one thing I do know is Florida's going to struggle to move the ball in Knoxville. So I'm going to attack the Florida team total under 19.5 points. I think it's going to be a long day for that Gator offense against this Tennessee front seven.
Hey, we've got a way that we both can win here, Danny, because I'm actually just going to go full game. I agree with you that Florida's offense, I think, is really going to be slowed down by Tennessee's defense. But I think Tennessee's offense is in a funk, and I'm not sure that it is going to be fixed right away. The offensive line has been whipped up on, and I do think Florida has some real athletes. The wide receivers are banged up, and some of the new additions, whether they be five-star freshman Mike Matthews, whether they be some of the transfer portal additions, haven't quite hit either. And so with no wide receivers really emerging as true difference makers, the pass attack has really been lacking even with all that talent at the quarterback position. So with Tennessee's defense being excellent and Tennessee's offense being in a little bit of a funk, I'm just going to go full game under.
Okay, let's talk about our game on CBS this week in the Big Ten, 3:30 Eastern time. It's Penn State, #4 in the country, going on the road to USC. Chip, that's a team that lost at Minnesota last week, and Lincoln Riley's 5-7 in his last 12 games there.
Man, we go from on top of the world beating LSU to now fans just kicking and screaming and pulling together all the heartbreaks of the Lincoln Riley era. And I think this might be another one, because we looked at this USC offense and we thought about, like, okay, they can't run the ball, but, you know, they're able to go out there and Miller Moss can throw it around. Well, the offensive line is getting beat up because they can't run the ball, and Miller Moss is having to run for his life. And if you thought that was happening against Minnesota's defensive front, well, here comes Penn State, which is an upgrade basically everywhere across the board. Now, I don't see USC's offense being able to click at a high level as long as Penn State can manage, you know, some of the extra pieces of this, flying all the way across the country, playing in the Coliseum. If Penn State meets the moment, Penn State wins this thing by 2 touchdowns. I will gladly lay the points here.
But Chip, some of those issues are very real. I know you probably know the record of teams traveling in the Big Ten across 2 time zones, right? 1-8 those teams are when they've had to do that. We got James Franklin out there complaining about the runway length there in State College. They have to bus to Harrisburg so they can fly out direct on the size plane they want to take. The other thing, too, is this is USC. Man, if there was a welcome moment, it's been a welcome month to the Big Ten for USC. Going Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Penn State. Some typical Big Ten blue bloods. But I think this is a game they can make not their style. They would love to get in a shootout. I don't think that's necessarily what happens. I'm not 100% sold on Drew Aller going against this USC defense, which has been gettable, but they have been better than last year of him going on the road and getting it done. So I like USC and the under, because I don't know if USC is going to be able to put up a bunch of points on that Penn State defense either.
On the road is an AP top 5 team. The last 3 times Penn State has lost outright, but those were all against ranked teams. Let's go to the Red River. It's #1 Texas, 2 touchdown favorites against Oklahoma, and it sounds like Quinn Ewers is going to return this week, Dan.
Yeah, he's playing. I think we've all known he was coming back. They've circled this date. I think they got him an extra week off when he probably could have come back against Mississippi State. Then he gets the bye week. I'm going to roll with the Longhorns. Makes me a little bit cautious because it is a rivalry game, because we have seen a wild, wacky college football season, but I think Texas is one of those teams that I trust with the offense, with the defense, getting it done. Michael Hawkins has been a nice, change up at quarterback, but I don't know if he's ready for what he's about to get into. So I'm going to lay him with the Longhorns.
I've got a couple of leans here. I might have a treasure map for you by Thursday, but for right now, I'm just going to say that Oklahoma in the first half plus 7.5 looks like great value, because I do think that in this game, the Sooners are going to come out and they're going to play some of their best football here in the first 15 to 20 minutes. Like, that is what I have the most confidence in. Unfortunately, they're at a talent deficit. They're at a performance deficit. And the more possessions there are in this game, the longer this game goes, the more chance I see for Texas to pull away. I think that Oklahoma is going to lean on its defense, lean on a little bit of ball control to limit the number of times Quinn Ewers gets the ball. And if they do that successfully, then absolutely I think Oklahoma can be going into the locker room at a touchdown deficit at a max. So give me the Sooners to come out in the rivalry game with a strong start, but understanding that I want to get my bet out of there by the time we get to the second half.
Texas 16-1 the last 17 regular season games. That one loss to Oklahoma last year. To 2 versus 3 now, out in Eugene. It's Ohio State, more than a field goal favorite at Oregon. They're -3.5. They've lost 4 straight against top 3 teams. Ryan Day has struggled in these situations since that 2020 playoff.
Did you know the Cover 3 podcast turned into the Ohio State Buckeyes podcast? I mean, if you would have listened to the show today, I mean, it was just these 3 guys were loving the Ohio State Buckeyes. I think there's value on the Oregon Ducks here, especially getting it over that field goal number at 3.5. I think they've been, Ohio State's been awesome. I don't think they've been tested like they're going to be tested in Eugene. This is really going to be Will Howard's first big moment on the national stage in a hostile environment. And I also think I trust Dylan Gabriel more to get it done, get the ball out of his hands quickly, try to play that time of position battle, get the run game going, and keep it away from all those weapons on the Ohio State Buckeyes. So I'm going to buck the trend, what I think is going to be on the Cover 3 podcast, and back those Ducks at home as a home dog.
lay them. I mean, just lay them. The Silver Bullets are the reason why I've got Ohio State as my #1 team in the country. I think they have the best defense in the country, and I think they have some of the most high-end explosive possibility and potential. Now, they haven't hit that potential. They have been frustrating at times with the way that, they'll play with their food for just a little bit, for a quarter, for a half, and then come out and lay the smack down after halftime. They are one of the best third-quarter teams in the entire country. I think the environment is going to be incredible. I think that Oregon is going to be well prepared, and I think that Will Stein is going to try to dial up as much as he can, but I think that Dylan Gabriel is going to find himself behind this offensive line with this set of wide receivers, really limited in what he's able to do. It will take some true hero ball, and while, including in that Red River game a year ago, he was able to pull out some heroic moments, I think it's going to be difficult against this Ohio State defense. I'll lay the points for the Buckeyes.
And you guys really going opposite each other on most of these contests that we've picked so far in the show. Let's look at what they did these first 5 games we picked. They only really agree that we're not going to see a ton of points in that Florida-Tennessee game. Everything else, opposite sides for Danny and Chip. We continue on with our picks against the spread of the top 25. Clemson is rolling. Mizzou is floundering right now. How do those teams play this week? Not against one another, but playing around the same time. College football picks against the spread on HQ. We got a Friday game in the Big 12. Utah and Arizona State late night on Friday. And a couple of weird ones, like Missouri going to UMass on Saturday at noon. Let's start with that Friday game. Chris Hassel, Danny Kanell in studio. We have Chip Patterson here as well. Utah and Arizona State, identical 4-1 records for a team. One picked to win the Big 12, the other picked to finish last in the Big 12.
Yeah, Kenny Dillingham's done an outstanding job with Arizona State, getting them up to competitive and being one of the surprises of the season. I do think he's going to run into a juggernaut known as that Utah defense. What I have no idea is who's playing quarterback for Utah, because that's just what we haven't known for the last year and a half since Cam Rising has been injured, and Kyle Whittingham loves to play cat and mouse with the media and the opposing coaching staff. That being said, whoever's playing, I'm going to take the under, because I do think Arizona State's offense will be slowed down by Utah's defense. And I'm kind of going under the assumption that it's going to be Isaac Wilson, which the offense isn't anywhere near to prolific as it has been. And even if Cam Rising did come back, I wonder where he is, and he might be a little bit rusty, so it could be a little bit sluggish. So I like the under overall in the game.
Well, we all have our biases, and my bias is I'm sick of the Cam Rising story. Arizona State plus 6.5. I mean, we heard Kyle Whittingham say this week that they've discussed internally a breaking point for when they just shut Cam Rising down for the rest of the year, which is a lot like what happened last year. And so as I go through this indecision, I put myself in that locker room. I mean, how maddening must it be if you're on the defense or the offensive line and just continually going through this process of uncertainty? I don't like what it does for the overall vibes here. Give me the Sun Devils off to that surprising start. Sam Leavitt with some of that little scootability against that Utah defensive front. He'll need it.
All right, let's jump to the ACC, a noon Eastern time kick. Number 10 Clemson is at Wake Forest. Danny, Wake Forest has lost 65 straight games against top 10 teams. Last time they won, their head coach was P-Head Walker. You ever heard of P-Head?
L. P-Head was a pretty strong one. Yeah, he was a great mind.
That was in 1946, Danny. Yeah. Clemson's favored by 20.5.
Clemson, you would think this going into the season, maybe this would be a letdown moment after having a big game against Florida State, but they didn't need a big game because Florida State hasn't been very good this season. Very business-like approach from Clemson. Man, they have been one of the stories quietly flying under the radar and quietly working their way back up the AP top 25. Since that game against Georgia, the offense has been explosive. I think that trend will continue against Wake Forest. I'll go ahead and lay the number. Watch out for Cade Klubnik working his way into the Heisman race as well.
Yeah, the letdown, I think, might be on the Wake Forest side of this. The Demon Deacons were trailing by 10 points going into the fourth quarter against NC State. A furious comeback, some really big plays, and that was an emotional win for that Wake Forest team. So I'd actually be looking for Wake Forest to maybe have a little bit of a hangover or a little bit of a letdown here. Also, don't forget the emotional part of this for Clemson, because Dabo Swinney promises Krispy Kreme donuts for the team. Krispy Kreme, of course, based just in Winston-Salem. But ultimately, I'm going to go back to my Clemson first half play. They've gotten off to tremendous starts in all of these wins, and they've also done a little bit more rotating in the second halves, letting more of the backups play, trying to keep their starters fresh. You know, that could be something from a coach in Dabo Swinney who wants to make sure that he is ready for a season that's going to go 13, 14, maybe even 15 or more games. So let's say it's the similar game plan. Tigers come out, lay the hammer in the first half. So I'll just lay that 11.5 number.
Let's go to another one of those top 10 teams that lost last week. And is there a bigger shift in atmosphere that Missouri's going to have going from College Station to wherever the hell UMass plays?
Mizzou has not been very good against Power 4 opponents, but they are awesome against programs like UMass. Lay the points. This is the get-right game for Missouri to try to get back some goodwill and some confidence in that offense. I think they could call their number against this team.
It's a Warren McGurk Alumni Stadium, Chipper.
Yeah, guys, I thought about looking at Amherst as a UMass first quarter play, but the line wasn't big enough to go UMass first quarter. Missouri lay the points.
UMass still hasn't beaten a power conference team since moving to the FBS over a decade ago. Let's go to Notre Dame, where Stanford won a couple of years ago. Stanford coming in, getting a lot of points, 23.5.
I'll go ahead and take the points with Stanford. They've actually been pretty competitive in almost all their games. I know they're getting banged up, and Notre Dame has a lot at stake still. They're still trying to keep alive their playoff hopes with that, only one blemish against Northern Illinois. I know they need to win impressively. I don't think they get it. I don't trust the offense yet to be one of those offense that puts up a ton of points, so I'll take the under as well.
Yeah, I'm going to be right there with you on the under. Stanford's quarterback room might as well be an infirmary. We might have a QB3 situation, glorified Wildcat offense. All that thrown together. Stanford plays this game to try to keep it as close as possible. That means that Notre Dame's defense is the best unit on the field, so I'll go under the total.
All right, Stanford won there as a 16.5-point underdog a couple of years ago, but those were much different teams. When we come back, we'll move on to the Georgia Bulldogs, still stinging from that loss to Bama. Now they've got a peek ahead to #1 Texas next week. How do they get up for lowly Mississippi State as a 30-plus point favorite? We'll pick it next. All right, let's look at a few more games to pick against the spread here. Late afternoon on Saturday. Interesting one in the Big 12. Arizona with all those offensive weapons at unbeaten BYU. But let's start with that game out in Pittsburgh. Cross-country trip for Cal. They were leading an unbeaten Miami team by 25 last week, Danny. They blew it. What about here against unbeaten Pitt?
I'm going to ride the Pitt Panther train that's been rolling this season. I took them last week against UNC. They came through for me. They've been one of the more pleasant surprises in the ACC. Eli Holstein is continuing to put up great numbers in Cade Bell, the new offensive coordinator system. Very uncharacteristic for Pitt. So I'm going to lay them with Pitt, but I'm also going to take the over. Fernando Mendoza is putting up some pretty good numbers, and Jaden Ott's been running all over people. That's the one thing. Pitt games have been sort of fun and high scoring. Again, uncharacteristic. So I like the over as well.
Yeah, I'm just going to take Pitt and lay it. I agree with you, Danny. This is like opposite vibes, right? Pitt went to North Carolina, beat North Carolina. Eli Holstein played great. They had lost a couple to the Tar Heels in a row. Cal just blew a 25-point lead in a game that they thought they had won. Cal's the team that's got to travel all the way across the country. And you mentioned Cade Bell. I mean, he came over from Western Carolina, brought a running back from Western Carolina, brought a wide receiver from Western Carolina. The fighting catamounts that are up there in Oakland are doing a good job, so I'll take Pitt and I'll lay the points.
All right, let's go to the Big Ten. We're going to get to see Illinois on CBS a week from Saturday. We know how Tom Fornelli feels about that, and they should still be ranked because they have Purdue coming in. Illinois unbeaten against the spread so far this season. It's a big number, though, Chip. You going to lay it?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, this might be an alt-line situation. Illinois is going to be able to pick its number. It's like this is going to be a spot where we are going to see Luke Altmaier get right back to some of the most prolific downfield passing. Purdue's pass defense has been horrendous. I look at that game of Wisconsin against Purdue where Wisconsin got above 50 points. That was a Purdue issue. That was not a Wisconsin issue. And so give me the Fighting Illini. Give me that offense. I'll bet it 3 different ways, but I'll lay the points.
I'm on the same way. Illinois. I looked at that Wisconsin game. Braden Locke, they put up 52 points, and he had 2 interceptions in the game. Didn't phase him one bit. I think you could see a similar outcome in this one. Purdue just having a rough year. All right, Illinois here in Lamb.
Yeah, it might be the year for Bielema there. He's 0-3 against Purdue as Illinois head coach, but if he loses this one, yikes. Let's go to Arizona at BYU, and BYU is already over their preseason win total of 4.5, Danny. They're 5-0.
It's been one of the stories of the season. I'm going to jump on this one as well. BYU, one of the better teams against the spread. People are still trying to figure this out. Playing in Provo's always a tough place to play. Kalani Sitake has really infused some life in this program. Again, a program there was not many expectations for. Numbers coming up a little bit, but as long as it's under that key number of 6, I'll still take it. I'll lay those points.
Speaking of key numbers, I'm just going to go ahead and jump on the under here, especially as we've got it at 49.5. I think that BYU's defense truly is maybe the better part of this unit. You know, what they can do. They play a little bit of bend but don't break, and they've done a good job, whether it's on third down or red zone, of being able to convert on those opportunities. That seems to be the way that you can get Arizona, a team that is wildly inconsistent. You know, obviously a high ceiling when you've got Noah Fafita and Teteroa McMillan. But the Wildcats haven't always been able to turn the yards and the potential into points on the scoreboard. I see a similar scenario here, so give me the under 49.5.
And we got some great matchups this week. Next week, there's some incredible ones, especially in the SEC. We're going to have Georgia and Texas playing one of those games. But first things first for Georgia, they have Mississippi State coming in. And you heard Kirby Smart after the game, not happy with the way the fans did or did not get up for that game last week.
Yeah, I think Georgia still wants to have a good taste in their mouth before they go to Texas, which is why I'm going to back the Bulldogs here in this one. I think they need to have a performance that infuses some confidence in their team. I mean, again, it was okay versus Auburn. They got the win. That was all that mattered. But I think this offense needs to be woken up. They struggled in that first half, and we saw Carson Beck struggle against Alabama. Then we saw the monster second half. I think this is exactly what the doctor ordered to get right. It's a big number, but Mississippi State is struggling. I'll just go ahead and lay it.
I am such a popular figure at the Georgia first half under club. I am fist bumping the bouncers on the way in. I'm getting free drinks at the bar, and y'all, I'm back on it, because not only is it just the Georgia first half under principle that the offense is a little bit conservative, then wakes up after halftime, that the defense comes out with a bunch of strong starts, forcing a lot of punts, but also the way that Mississippi State played against Texas, they played not to get blown out. It's a Jeff Lebby team, but they were not running that up-tempo, no-huddle offense at all. They were taking their time, limiting possession, shrinking the game. And what happened? Texas had a hard time blowing them out, even though they did win handily. But at halftime, it was a low-scoring game. Similar thought here. So the Georgia first half under principle is now only emboldened by the Mississippi State don't get blown out game plan.
All right, that is not the best SEC game of the week. We are going to pick that one next, or at least one of them, and it's in Death Valley, Baton Rouge, where Ole Miss comes in as a favorite. And if it's anything like last season's matchup, look out. And the guys on the same side here, they agree for once. Only a few more top 25 games to pick here with Danny Kanell and Chip Patterson, and one of them is real late night Saturday night on CBS Sports Network. The Heisman favorite, Ashton Jeanty, taking on Hawaii. But we're going to start with that 7:30 kick in the SEC. It's Ole Miss going to LSU. Chip, last year when these two teams matched up, Ole Miss won 55-49. What's your play?
My best bet is this is a dumb game. I'm saying penalties over. I'm taking, touchdowns maybe called back over, personal fouls over. And you know what happens when you play those kind of dumb games? LSU finds ways to win those dumb games. I think that LSU playing at home, coming out of coming out of last week with all that time to be able to assess what you're going to do. This seems like a great spot for Garrett Nussmeier to go and push the ball down the field against an Ole Miss secondary that I do think can be had and has not necessarily been tested in a major way. So give me Ole Miss plus the point. LSU plus the points.
Just throw in there Ole Miss injured players, as they have had an epidemic of players going down after big plays. Just coincidence? Maybe not. Something to keep an eye on in that one. I am with you. I don't trust Ole Miss. We saw them struggle against Kentucky and lose. I'm not convinced that they're just back after going to Columbia and having a nice win against South Carolina. That game was more about South Carolina's ineptitude on offense than, to me, it was about an offense, which still did struggle. I think this probably will be a higher scoring game, but Baton Rouge at night, one of the toughest environments to play in. I'll go ahead and take LSU as the home dog as well, and I wouldn't be surprised they win outright.
Okay, so you might sprinkle a little on the money line as well. That's obviously a great atmosphere. Death Valley always is, maybe the top in sports. Sneaky under the radar, great environment this weekend. It's going to be in Morgantown, West Virginia, Chip. It's the Coal Rush. They're going to be wearing coal-colored uniforms for number 11 Iowa State. I don't like this spot for the Cyclones. What about you?
I don't either. So look, think about where West Virginia is at. They had that lightning delay against Kansas, and then they came back and they really stole it. And you just give the Mountaineers a lot of credit. So they go into the off week with a little bit of confidence. They come out of the off week and they put Oklahoma State's season in a body bag in one half. In 30 minutes of football, they ended the Cowboys 2024 campaign. RIP, thoughts and prayers. I just think that West Virginia right now has to be feeling themselves. And when you throw in that home field environment and the fact that Iowa State has bled a little, we haven't seen them really pay for it. But whether it is against Houston when they were only able to muster 20 points, whether it is at Baylor, a game that was very competitive until the final, several sequences and possessions, I think that this is a ripe spot for the Clones to get got. So I'll take West Virginia.
I don't hate the pick, but you know what I like better? I like the under, because I do think Iowa State's defense has probably been the story of the year. Brocco Becht burst on the scene last year, and he's been solid once again, but the defense to me has been the surprise, and I think that defense travels, but that atmosphere is going to be ruckus. I think that could slow down Iowa State's offense as well, so I'll just take the under 51.5 in the game.
You go ruckus and not raucous, huh?
Yeah.
He brings the ruckus.
Right.
What is that? What's that from?
Wu-Tang Clan.
Okay.
Come on.
Okay. Thank you. Kansas State, Colorado, also Big 12. Also a Colorado team that's unbeaten in conference play, and they're coming off the bye week, Danny.
I'm going to do it. I'm a believer.
Whoa.
Do you believe? I know Chip doesn't believe. I'm going to go ahead and believe in the Colorado Buffaloes coming off a bye week after that big win against UCF. I love the messaging from Deion Sanders, Coach Prime telling his team they haven't done anything yet. Backing them at home. Boulder is one of those places you'll smell the skunks in the air, but I also think that crowd is going to be an atmosphere. Avery Johnson's been awesome, and the bounce back was really good, but I'm curious to see what he does on the road here with a lot of eyeballs on him. I'll go ahead and take Colorado in those points.
Do you believe?
Danny does. And so do I.
Oh.
In the fourth quarter. All right, this is really sick. Just think about Shadur Sanders in the fourth quarter. It does not matter whether Kansas State's up by a lot or Colorado's up by a lot. You know what Colorado does not do? They don't stop taking swings. So I'm going to go Colorado in the fourth quarter plus a 1.5. We just need the Buffs to either be able to try to knock down that back door like what Danny might need, or to just continue to try to score if they happen to have the lead. This is a Colorado team that offensively doesn't really have a brake pedal, so that's why we'll go Colorado in the fourth quarter as our best bet.
I love that play. Let's move on to the last game of the weekend. It's late night, 11 p.m., CBS Sports Network. It's Boise, the front runner to get that Group of 5 spot in the playoff, and the Heisman front runner, Chip, Ashton Jeanty.
Boise team total over until the cows come home, gentlemen. They hit it by halftime against Utah State. The Ashton Jeanty in this offense, they are just going to continue to mow down opponent after opponent. And so what happens in terms of trying to cover these big spreads, I don't necessarily want to be a part of just because they're going to be such high possession games. But what I do feel confident in is this is a Boise State team that can go out there and score 45 points almost every single night. So I will go Boise team team total over.
I don't know how many time zones we're going across from Boise, Idaho, out to Honolulu, Hawaii, but it is a tough road trip. A lot of distractions out there. I think Ashton Genty continues to roll, but I think Hawaii puts up enough points to cover that big number. So give me the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors here as the underdog.
Big time zone guy. You mentioned time zones.
I'm telling you, we've seen it evidenced this year with more travel with conference realignment. Teams are struggling.
Okay, that's Danny Kanell. He only goes from Florida to New York City, so he doesn't have to change time zones when he's flying around. Chip Patterson joining us here as well, as they do every week, picking games against the spread. Danny, red hot last week. Chip's been great all season. You can find them on the Cover 3 podcast. Scan the QR code. It'll take you right there. Download, follow. It's the best college football podcast you'll find.